Ever since Super Smash Bros. Melee, the Fire Emblem series has been a staple in the world of Smash, and with the recent installments, some people think that it might have become a little too much of one. Regardless, this tactical series might have brought us some amazing swordsmen, swords people, but it also gave us 3 excellent stages to do battle on. Despite Marth and Roy making their debut in Super Smash Bros. Melee, they weren't given a home stage of their own, and they instead had to piggyback on the Zelda character's temple. However, it's possible to find an unused stage named Akinia in Melee's debug menu. Akinia, of course, is Marth's home country, and most likely refers to a Fire Emblem stage that was scrapped during Melee's development. It's possible to access Akinia with a hacking device, but when it's loaded, the game will simply crash. It wouldn't be until Brawl that we got a Fire Emblem stage, and what a great one it is! It's fair to say that Castle Siege is the most iconic stage of the trio. Interestingly enough, this stage is not based on any particular location in the Fire Emblem series, but is instead an amalgam of various motifs and designs of the series as a whole. Castle Siege is broken up into 3 sections. It starts atop a castle that's under attack, but will quickly transition into a throne room, and finally, inside of a volcano? To make things easier, we're going to handle this one section at a time. To help us identify what castle this is, it makes the most sense to start off with a symbol on each of the flags. And it doesn't come from any of the games. Instead, this dragon seems to be a combination of the insignias of the country Dayan, featured in Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, as well as a symbol of the Dole Empire, the main antagonist of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon. One of the main background elements of this stage are fireballs being flung at the castle walls, but since there's no way to see where these are being fired from, there's several ways this could happen. Most likely they're being fired by the Pachyderm or Hoistflamm siege weapons, but they could also be the result of a mage casting a fire spell. Honestly, the only spell that would fit the bill is Meteor, since it has the same range as the ballista weaponries in the games. 20 years prior to Path of Radiance, the Apostle Misaha was assassinated and the Senate blamed the peaceful Heron tribe. In response, the citizens burned down the Heron tribe's home, Serenus Forest, which coincidentally is the name of the website that helped me research this episode. This became known as the Serenus Massacre, and could explain why the forest in the background of the castle siege is on fire. That brings us to the second part of the stage, the throne room. In the background, there's a character resembling the Black Knight, the main bad guy from Path of Radiance, sitting atop a throne. He's guarded by several halberdiers sporting red armor, designating them as enemy characters in the Fire Emblem series. The only time the Black Knight has ever been seen near a throne would be during his encounter with Ike at Fort Pinel from Path of Radiance, so it's fair to say that this is what his presence is referring to. As for the design of the throne room itself, it's visually similar to the castles from Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. Coincidentally, this was also the first game in the Fire Emblem series to feature backgrounds during conversations, with one of them also resembling Castle Siege's throne room. The symbol behind the Black Knight is something that drove me insane trying to research. I even consulted with some of the biggest Fire Emblem fans out there, and the only connection that we were able to find was that it bears a striking resemblance to the crowns worn by the divine dragon Naga, their reincarnation Nagi, and their daughter Tiki. That seriously might be pushing it, but it's the best that we could do. Another symbol that we had a hard time identifying are on these platforms. After scouring the glyphs and symbols of the Fire Emblem series, this looks the most like what's on the Winterwhelm spell tome, but that was introduced in Fire Emblem Awakening, which came out after the stage's release in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. The statues holding up the platforms don't seem to come from anywhere, but they can be destroyed. It's worth noting that Fire Emblem Binding Blade, the one with Roy, was the first game in the series to feature destructible terrain. Finally, there's this. Okay, so the lava portions of this stage has pretty much no defining features or characteristics, so there's not much that can be said about it. However, I will say that almost every single game in the Fire Emblem series ever since Binding Blade has featured a chapter set around magma. When Smash Bros. 4 rolled around, we were treated to 2 new Fire Emblem stages, one for the Wii U and one for the 3DS. The Wii U got the Colosseum, which is based on a common reoccurring element of the Fire Emblem series, the arena. When you enter an arena, you can send in a character to fight for fame and glory. But mostly cash. If they win, you reap the bounty, but if they lose, they die in the traditional permadeath that we Fire Emblem fans loathe and love to loathe. Much like the Castle Siege, the Colosseum is also not based on any particular Fire Emblem game, with Sakurai confirming this in a Miiverse post. We've added a familiar setting from the Fire Emblem series, the Colosseum. In the original game, this place is filled with both hope and despair. There is machinery in the ground that activates variable platforms. The machinery that Sakurai mentioned sadly doesn't come from any of the Fire Emblem games, but we can take a look at the design of the Colosseum for a moment. The background seems reminiscent of the arena designs from Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and also Sacred Stones. The dragon statues in the background, on the other hand, resemble the Manakete. Manakate? Manicotti? the people who can transform into dragons and vice versa. I think the statues most closely resemble the fire dragons from the original 2 Fire Emblems, and especially those in their remakes. However, it could also be argued that these statues look more like Myrrh from Sacred Stones, or Kurth Naga from Ike's games. While the Wii U had the Colosseum, the 3DS got Arena Ferox. This is the only Fire Emblem stage to be based on a specific location in a Fire Emblem game. In this case, it's the titular Arena Ferox from Fire Emblem Awakening. In its base state, Arena Ferox is nearly identical to its in-game counterpart, with the main exceptions being the bottomless pit that surrounds the battlefield and the absence of its 4 staircases from the map's overview. Arena Ferox transforms in a similar fashion to the Pokemon Stadiums, cycling through various layouts. One in particular features statues of the same design as those seen in the Castle Siege. Note the identical headgear. Just like their counterparts, these statues are also destructible. And that's about it. What? Arena Ferox and Awakening was just a generic-looking Colosseum, and everything that Smash added to it was made up, so that the 3DS could have a transforming stage since the Wii U got Pokemon Stadium. I seriously wish that there was more to talk about, but that's it. But now, it's time to make like a Fire Emblem summoner, and summon up next month's summon box from Loot Crate. What I'm showing you might be from last month's Villains 2 crate, and while you might not get this crazy weird Venom mug, if you sign up by the 19th, you'll be getting some great Pokemon swag, an exclusive piece of supernatural merchandise, and much, much more. My Loot Crate buddies, just go to lootcrate.com/theorist and type the code theorist at checkout, and you can save yourself 10% off. But hey, let's have a vote. Which Fire Emblem character would you like me to do a video on next? Marth or Ike? Let me know so I can play through the hundreds of hours of Fire Emblem. My Pegasus Knight just died again, so now I have to restart this entire battle. Yay.